Okay, so I'm very happy to meet you all. And as I say, this is an invitation from Asaf. And basically, I'm going to um, give the floor to Asaf to ask me anything. I have to say that what I will say is very much, in this form, very much personal. I'm not here representing Tovana, representing a particular view or a particular group or a particular uh, situation or organization or anything like that. That's the invitation from myself, and I'm really happy for that. Is just to have a dialogue. What, where am I? Where am I? Where's this Stephen in all of this? And so there'll be some honesty, um, and I don't expect you to agree or whatever. I don't expect anything, but I do appreciate that you're listening and are giving me the opportunity just to express the way I see things at this time. I don't feel fear, but I feel such a sadness and so much pain that is happening. Every shell that is fired from an Israeli gun that falls somewhere on some village, on some people, and every rocket coming from Lebanon falling somewhere in Kiryat Shmone or wherever it does, and damaging and hurting and the soldiers on both sides. So I feel a lot of that um, that pain. I feel it in the body, and it's a kind of something like I can't digest. It's something like eating stones, and it feels like inside there. It doesn't stop the happiness of my daily life. I do feel, you know, but that's the emotional tone that um, arises. And I also feel a mourning, hitablut in Hebrew. I feel mourning. And I feel mourning for the huge amount of death and destruction that's going on, not just personally in the north, but of course in the beginning in south in the in outside Gaza, the death, destruction, and terrible things that happened on October the 7th, and then the terrible things that continued to happen since then in Gaza. And I feel a mourning. I feel that I'm mourning, and it's not only mourning for the death and the destruction and the terrible suffering going on, but also mourning the illusion, mourning the sense of illusion that somehow or other we keep sleepwalking into more war and into more disaster. It's as if we're all sleepwalking. And to me, that is very painful. The living in Israel has not reduced that view of the sameness of human life, whichever side of the border it is. I felt that right at the beginning. Of course, I cried, and I felt at the beginning in October the 7th this terrible pain of what was going on there. But I, the other day, I was reading Ayman Odeh, who was writing in Haaretz, and he said, anyone that feels that the life and the well-being of an Israeli child and a Palestinian child is exactly the same needs to go out on the street and shout it. And I did feel like that. I needed to go out the street and shout it. But to be honest, I didn't shout it very much because I felt a little bit like, well, who I didn't. I felt there was such a strong consensus, and I was getting some ricochets, which I don't mind. It's okay for people to be angry with me if I think differently. I'm really okay with that. Uh, but I felt a bit lonely. at times because the consensus was so strong called, we cannot we have to smash them because there's no other way. And I had a very, very strong view that says what happened on October the 7th is a call for waking up. It's not a call for going to sleep and having another war and another war and another war. But I really feel now that what's happening in the continuation of the war and the continuation of the fighting is that in some way or other it's building up for the next war. And what happened on October the 7th showed us that we can't keep going like that. It showed us our vulnerability on this side of the border. Israelis are vulnerable too. We're human beings and we are not immortal. And the vulnerability it should be a wake-up call, but it's a question whether how much the wake-up call is effective. If you ask me what should happen now, today, the war should stop, the fighting should stop, no more killing. Today, it has to stop and a totally new direction found using all the avenues that are possible. And there are many avenues and there are many ways forward. And so I feel that we cannot, it's for us, as for Israel, as well as for everyone, that our survival depends on not continuing wars, but finding a radically different way of doing things. And we've had wars for 70 years. And therefore it shows it hasn't worked. And another war, to me, is, there's a Chinese phrase that says, if you go for revenge, you have to dig 2 graves. And I think in a way we're digging 2 graves here. And that's my view. And if we just postpone it for another war, I am fearful for the life of my children and my grandchildren because we cannot sustain an existence here in Israel and Palestine based on only wars and force. So if so many people are saying only force works, only force is relevant, then we need to look for those people and listen to those people that say only kindness works and only kindness is relevant. And there will always be people who say that. And that gives me hope. I don't know how long it will take. What I can't say is whether it's tomorrow, whether it's for my children will still be fighting wars. I don't know. But I do know that a human being, and which includes karma, which includes the fact that fate is not written in stone, that everything is fluid and flexible, that amazing changes can happen, and they can happen quite quickly. I feel that there isn't such a thing as a person that is kind of totally fixed and a kind of they're like that, they will be like that, there's nothing we can do, they're always going to be like that. I don't buy that. I've seen enough hugely violent people that change of heart. I'll give you an example. We worked for years and many of you know, in dialogues with Israelis and Palestinians. And occasionally we did get participants on the Palestinian side who were equivalent to the Hamas. They were angry, they were violent, they came in, they were shouting at us, they were shouting at the Palestinians for talking to Israelis, they were shouting at us for arriving, for being there, even though it was a peace weekend. But we did manage to talk and the talking and the listening did something. And again, we found people who were fundamentally violent, but also in the Israeli side, people that had strong views of that only violence worked. And when you look at that and you begin to listen and you begin to see the pain that is under that, and you allow that suffering and pain, something can move in the soul. And I have a pretty clear sense that if there was a movement to peace, if the Israel side said, right, we're ready now, let's talk in any avenue, let's support, let's repair Gaza, let's support the Palestinian people, let's renew things, let's start talking, let's start listening, let's start connection, let's start communication. The heart of so many people would change, and slowly, slowly, Hamas itself would also change. It will not happen overnight. If someone is totally, totally ready for violence and extreme, yes, of course, this person, and you can't talk to them, they put them in prison. Don't kill thousands of people because of that. If you can, yes, you should do something to protect life for anybody, anyone, whether Israeli or Palestinian. If someone is impossible to talk to them and only knows violence, then yes, you can protect life. But I think slowly, slowly, it will take time, but slowly, slowly, that will stop. That will change. If the whole movement of peace happened, then slowly, slowly, there would be different narratives. So right now, the narrative on both sides is only force works. And I agree with you that the force that we've seen, the violence that we've seen against Israelis on October the 7th was really extreme. And it just shows the kind of craziness there. They're people with, the mind doesn't work the way we expect. But that doesn't mean to say that people can't change, that something can shift, that the narratives that support that will change. I mean, if there could be peace with Palestinians, I think the voices of extremes on both sides would begin to go down. They would begin to soften. They would see that peace works. They would see that they can bring their children to school, that there's enough to eat, that the families can live together, that there is something to be really precious to be gained from it. And that would actually, uh, I think, push the extremes on both sides actually to having less voice, less control, and less extreme on both sides. But it needs a roadmap. It needs intention and clarity. Somewhere or other, people have to have hope. We can't just say, yes, yes, we want peace. What are we doing for it? What will we give for it? There needs to be some real commitment, hunger for peace, deep hunger on both sides, a real, in a way, peace, because this is the way we survive. We can't survive without it. And when that hunger is there, then things can change. There's two forms of hope. One is hope that it will be better, which I cannot say I have that hope. But there is a hope which is just the positive heart that says things can be better. It is possible. And the Dharma encourages clear seeing, and it encourages a big open heart and clear seeing of what's happening. And it encourages being beyond the identity of me and the other and the labels and so on. Then that's all about knowing and seeing and feeling with a big heart and a big mind. It doesn't say what we should believe. When I heard so many people that were in the Dharma were really peace-oriented people suddenly talking with another language, saying there's no other way. They're also that like you said, your Palestinian friends, I heard also many people around me who I assumed were in a different head coming with that there is no other way. We have to smash them. So I felt kind of a confusion or how am I going to deal with this and where am I with that? It wasn't clear to me. And I felt just a lot of pain because of it. And I was saying mourning is I was mourning in a way Dharma friends that suddenly I noticed how much their language had been collected from the communal language, the collective language, the consensus seemed to sweep everybody. And to be honest, I felt some myself not part of the consensus, but rather a bit confused. And then the waking up for me was a sense like, whoa, hitpakhut, exactly. I am not going to be part of this. I felt a real clear clarity that I have to step out of that, and that there's no way I could support what's going on now as that view that we have no other way. We have to fight them and we have to bomb Gaza. So I began to wake up to say, this is deep ignorance, that the no other way and the bombing of Gaza is the only thing we need to do now. I felt was a great ignorance. And there was the mourning, and it made me feel very clear in the sense that this is not the way forward. This is not going to bring back the people that were killed. This is not going to help our survival as in Israel. This is not going to be a good future for my children. This is not going to stop Hamas, because there'll be another Hamas coming out of this because of the suffering there. For example, people at the beginning used to say to me, well, if a Hamas person came through the door, you mean, and wanted to kill you and your children, you mean you wouldn't do anything? And it's one of the questions that's impossible to answer. I don't know what I would do. but I began to realize that's not the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is the ignorance that says, in order to deal with our fear, we have to make war on the enemy. That's not to stop the enemy, it's to stop our fears. And that I felt there's one ignorance there that wasn't being looked at, which is our fears are producing, again, in a way, over the years, another war and another war and another war because of our fears, because of our sense of being victim, and the other side exactly the same.
How can we talk with an organization that wants to destroy us?
Well, I think it's, first of all, it's already happening through Qatar. So talking has already happened. And that's maybe a tiny little light in the darkness. We just have to keep going with that. I've heard voices, people from Hamas who are saying, actually, we, we, we don't have to, Israel can exist. We don't all have to say Israel shouldn't exist. So it's a voice of extreme, but I see the voice of extreme will be modified once things change on the ground. So I don't believe Hamas are a kind of a gush or a body that all believe the same and that there's no one to talk to there. This is one of the narratives that's kept things going. There's no one on the other side to talk to. It's simply not true. There is always people to talk to, and there will always be people to talk to, but we have to have the willingness to make the effort. So there's many, many ways we can do this. We can use intermediary. We can use Israeli Arabs to be a link between Jews and Arabs. We can use Qatar. We can use the international community. We can use whoever, peacemakers like you and me and all of us here, to talk. And just have a confidence that through that talking and listening, things move. Not in one night, not in one day, but movement happens, and then the voices change, and then Hamas will not be the same, and Israelis will not be the same. Things will change, but we have to make the effort. and have the courage and the confidence to do things differently.